Well, welcome back. So, a lawyer and a financial advisor walk into a bar, Alex.
And then what happens, Dave?
Well, there's a question that poses. So, what does success really look like?
Oh, good question. What does success look like? I thought success was obvious. It's just making tons and tons of cash.
Yeah.
Isn't that what, I mean, that's certainly what most of the business owners if I was to ask the business owners that I know, my clients and stuff, I think that's the first thing that would come to mind. Although I think if they thought about it a little deeper, there'd be more to it than that.
Yeah, but that's certainly, I think, from one perspective, a lot of people will say your measurement of success across society is,
Yeah.
cash in the bank and
Yeah.
possessions. But, and look, as a financial advisor, that is definitely, that is a catalyst to move
Yeah.
forward on a lot of stuff. And people will measure you based upon, what's been the performance of your investing to help us get to where we want. Therefore, we can measure you on that success. And I think part of it is it's an easy measurement. But I suppose that's part of our engagement and discussions with a lot of people. Success means so many different things to different people.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. And if you don't know where you're going, I suppose, how do you know, if you're on the right track?
Correct.
Yeah.
Correct.
Yeah.
We can use a very simple example of success is just, two professionals starting up a podcast.
Oh, yeah.
Hey, there we
Then
go.
you're obviously a huge star, a big podcasting star. Then you've made it when
Correct.
when you've got your own
Right,
podcast that's named after you, and you think, "Wow, I'm a
It's
superstar."
time to hang up the boots.
Well, actually, I've been on the radio a bit recently, and a few people I've been, at client meetings or at networking functions or whatever,
Yeah.
and people said, "Oh, I heard your radio interview. You're a big star." And I said, "Oh, well, that's when I'm not on the TV, I'm on the radio." And they're like, "Oh, really?" And no, none of that's true.
Do you whip out your autograph book and say, or just throw out cards to them along the way?
Well, it is funny how I think in their mind, at least, they went, "Oh, well, you wouldn't be invited on the radio to be interviewed unless you were a success."
Yes,
You know what I mean?
yes.
That was a sort of a sign of success. And something else, actually, that happens a lot when I go to functions, people say to me, "Oh, how many people have you got?" And often when they say, "How many people in your organisation?" and they often clarify and say, not how many people, but how many partners. So, a law firm, right? I like a law firm. The more partners you have in a law firm, the more successful you are in their mind, right? And of course, staff are a cost. They're not
Correct. It's not always commensurate to the sort of your bottom line margin when you've got more partners.
Yeah, and in fact, if they're equity partners, then they're sharing the profit as well. And so,
Correct.
So more partners. I mean, that's obviously you're not going to have equity partners, hopefully, unless they're bringing some value to the organisation. But there was a real sense of the bigger you are in terms of headcount, the more successful you are, or the more you're on radio, the more in the media you are, the more successful you are. And those two things are, from a law firm success point of view, if you ask me, are completely independent. They've got nothing to do with it. You could be a sole practitioner, happy as a lark, very successful, or you could have, be in a massive international firm and be about to top yourself. You're so depressed,
Yeah, because you're working so much.
Yeah, that's right, and not for yourself.
So do you get the sense of the imposter syndrome when you're out there? That's like they're asking me here. I'm like, do I know what I'm really talking about, or do you kind of fake it till you make it?
Well, I mean, I think the radio has given me some legitimacy, which I think, I don't know if that's well-founded or not. People say, "Oh, you're on the radio, you must know what you're talking about." Yeah. So that's good. But we're a very small organisation, and I think sometimes people see that as being a bad thing. They say, "Oh, well, if you're small, then you must not be very good."
And I find that interesting too, because when you start to, you say from a success point of view, well, it kind of comes back to your area of niche that you function in. But if someone comes to you seeking legal advice and you're unable to deliver it because that's not your particular niche, well, you can have the capacity to bring in a third party or refer them out to someone else.
Or a barrister or whatever.
Well, whatever it might be. To me, that means you're still working towards a successful outcome. So to me, that is also, part of it then becomes a really good sign of success is your capacity to listen to what people are talking to you about or explaining, but by asking more questions rather than just coming back with a solution to them as well.
Yeah.
So the successful.
You're talking about success of your clients, are you?
Well, yeah. I mean, I think you can be reflective as a successful business if your clients are getting a successful outcome.
Yeah. So you're having a good impact in the
Correct.
The area that you work.
Correct.
Yeah.
Which may not always be a financial success.
Yeah.
It is one aspect, but again, I think part of it, people come to professionals to seek advice on certain things. Now, the success may not be on a scale of, 10 being it was absolutely phenomenally successful to 0, like we're unsuccessful, but you've got an outcome.
Yeah. Yeah.
But the scale of that success may vary upon the, within the eyes of who the recipient of that outcome is. But again, it kind of comes back to, yes, but we've got a successful outcome. It may not be the outcome that we're looking for, or it might be the outcome we're looking for, but, again, to me, that's what success looks like, is that we keep things moving forward for people. And then, as you said previously, are we going in the right direction?
Yeah, yeah.
That's another one. It's always there's an interesting cartoon that floats around about, climbing the successful ladder, but which wall do you put the ladder against?
Oh, right, yeah.
And how close are the runs in between?
Yeah.
I mean, if they're too far apart, you can't move up. But again, if it's leaning against the wrong wall, well...
Yeah. Well, I mean, I see it in terms of financial success. There's no question in my mind that making money is part of the kind of ingredients of success for running a business. In fact, it's a prerequisite. If you don't make any money, then you can't pay staff. You can't, have an impact with your clients. You can't, develop your people. You can't, buy assets, do all the things you need to do. So,
it gives you choices.
Yeah, that's right. And power to do the things that you might need to do. Yeah, it empowers you, I should say.
Yep.
So financial success is, I think, a sort of a prerequisite, or you sort of assume that that's what you need. But then, what do you want to do with that profit? Or what do you want to do with that successful business? What are you trying to have an impact in a particular community? Are you trying to generate a lifestyle for yourself?
Yep.
I think a lot of people start a business, with hoping to make a lot of money.
Yep.
They might make okay money, or they might make great money, but it impacts their lifestyle in a negative way, not in a positive way. They've got time away from the family or from what's important to them, time away from their hobbies and interests and loves, and so you got, well, maybe working less but making less money is okay, or maybe there's a way of working less and still making the same money, or whatever it is. But what does that all look like? And are your business goals, is what you're actually doing day to day in your business, aligned to that? I see that all the time. That people are like, they might, ask them what's success, and they might say, "Oh, I want to spend more time with the kids, and I want to, earn enough money to pay the private school fees." Okay, no worries. But then the things they're doing in business really are totally nothing to do with the kids, and all they're trying to do is earn heaps more money than they perhaps need to pay the school fees.
Correct. There's a complete misalignment between their, personally what they want to do, but professionally what they want to do.
Yeah, and I see that in particular in the disputes area. I deal with litigation and business disputes, and often people, can be quite bitter and twisted about disputes, and they say, "Oh, well, I want to get an outcome, and I want the outcome to look like this, and I don't care what it costs." You say, "Okay." And then you go, well,
that's music to a lawyer's ears, isn't it?
Yeah, I go, oh, great. You don't care what I got. So in that case, I can charge you whatever you like. And they say, oh, no, I don't want, I mean, it's just a joke. But often the dispute really is causing all sorts of emotional and, physiological stresses on people.
Yeah.
And not being accounted for, laying at night, thinking about it, waking up in the morning and sending me 10 emails because they've thought about it all night. And often what they've stewed on, if you like, is not particularly helpful from a legal point of view. But they're not being able to kind of really define what a success might look like. You were sort of saying before, success might just be getting this dispute sorted out, regardless of the outcome. Just get it done. So
because then you get it out of your head. It's like, because it just keeps ticking along. So we need to resolve it. Now, you may not come out with the best result. It depends on which side of the fence you sit on. For someone, we've evened it out, win-win for everyone. But some people will always have an attitude in any sort of process of it was a win-lose. Well, So is that successful? Where you're always like, I've always got to win. Yeah, but at what cost?
Yeah, well,
like there's a cost to everything.
I'll tell you a story about that. When I made an offer once for a client for a dispute. So it's quite a hotly contested dispute, but our sort of opening offer, if you like, the other side. So we offered to pay X amount, and the other side said, we accept. And that was it. And the client said, oh, no, that's bad. And I said, well, why is that bad? And he said, well, because we've offered to pay this amount. We could have obviously offered less. There was more because the other side accepted our opening offer. Basically, I see that as a loss. And I said, but that's the amount that we opened with, expecting to have to pay more. So we actually got the best outcome we could have really hoped for.
Yep.
Maybe we'd miscalculated on all that. Who knows? But the point is, the client got an outcome that they defined as success prior to the other side accepting it.
Yes,
the minute the other side accepted it, not success anymore.
Correct.
What we actually really wanted to do was screw them down to the best deal that we could have, rather than get the money that we thought we were entitled to or whatever. So it was just a sort of an interesting lesson in psychology. And it rarely happens that the other side accept your opening offer. But if they do, often people feel ripped off.
Yep.
When in fact that's the best outcome because we had more in the tank. We would have paid much more than what we offered to pay. And so the outcome was as good as the client could have hoped for, but the way the other side behaved sort of impacted the way they interpreted success.
Yeah. So the question that we've got is, what does success look like? And this is where it comes back to for today's discussion is, we got to define what success is before we go into some sort of either negotiation or to make some decisions for your business or your life going forward. You want to be able to define what success looks like. Yeah. Otherwise, you're just rambling on down the road.
Yeah.
Where are you kind of, what are the markers that you're putting in there that sort of you can stop and pause and say, wow, look where we've come from to where we sort of come back to, which is an interesting one. This is kind of part of I suppose, is this book that, which I can show here, The Who Not How by Dan Sullivan.
Right.
And a lot of this, sorry, it's not Who Not How, it's the Gap and the Gain. Same authors, but the Gap and the Gain. So part of this, so there's two aspects of the two books. One is about Who Not How, who can help me get to this success area that I want to go to, right? Yeah. So I don't need to do everything, but through where we've defined where we want to go, who can help me, but I don't need to know how to do it. The other side of that then says, how do I anchor my, I suppose, expectations? So my starting point is here, and we've got to here. But what sometimes people forget about when they're looking at their success, but we could have got to there. So therefore, they're focused on the gap, not the gain from the baseline up. They're sort of saying, but I missed the next 10%. So it's like, well, it is. It's human nature. It's like, but we could have, if we'd done this, we would have got there. Yeah. But you've gone from 0 to 7 in this time frame. So there's a gain. Like, there's a very important success that you've picked up. Could have you got to 10 and you got an extra 3? So why are you focusing on not reaching the extra 3 in that time period? You can still get there, but enjoy the journey and enjoy your successes along the way. Yeah. So it's a really interesting approach, because there's so many times people, they set out these plans. It's like, but if I just got a little bit more, then I'll be happy. But if I get a little bit more, then I'll be happy. And then, and it kind of rolls on and on. It's like, but you're not actually celebrating any of your successes along the way. It doesn't just flip overnight and you go from 0 to 100. You progressively work your way through. So, to me, it's also, what does success look like? It's being able to appreciate the little milestones along the way, acknowledge them, and then move on. There's always a way to improve, but that's personally and professionally. What are the things that you're trying to do along the way that you can say, well, I've been successful in that approach?
Yeah, well, certainly in my experience, I think I shift the goalposts further ahead, so they're always out of my reach. So no matter how successful I am, I kind of go, but the next thing I want to, build win the next job or win the next case or whatever it is,
chasing the horizon.
I want to be on the TV.
Yeah.
So you shift what you think is success, and so then you almost always end up feeling
disappointed,
like you failed.
That's where they talk about you're chasing the horizon. Well, the horizon just keeps moving forward. It doesn't. Yeah. You never get to the horizon. That's why it's referred to as it's just further out. Yeah. So it is this real balance to get people to accept the fact. And that's why it's so important at the start of the year. What do I want to achieve over the year? Right. And if you've got there, acknowledge that fact. And sure, there may be some disappointments that you didn't get to a particular point, but don't focus so much on the gap. Focus on the gain that you've picked up in that agreed sort of time period. To me, that helps you understand what success looks like because you've defined it.
Yeah. Well, and I'd say with the year, I mean, it's good to have a year plan, but I think people generally, you sort of you overestimate what you can do in a year, but you kind of underestimate what you can do in 3 years. You know, that you can actually, some things take a while. They take, and, to try and achieve a business plan or whatever in 1 year is sort of unrealistic. You might want to give yourself 3 years, and obviously there's milestones along the way. There's a sort of I don't know what it is about. It's kind of a human bias to underestimate the things because in 3 to 5 years you can achieve a whole lot of stuff, and I think people often think in years and businesses and financial years and all of that sort of stuff. And there's nothing wrong with that. I mean, we think in my business we think month to month. Every month has its own metrics, and then every quarter, and then every year. But and we're trying to do this 3 to 5 year planning. Where am I going to be in especially when you're young, 3 to 5 years is a reasonable period to plan over. But you don't want to try and achieve the world in 1 year.
Well, there's also then, because that then comes back to the point around in celebrating your successes along the way. But if you keep looking too far out, you're missing, you're kind of missing stuff along the way. It's a bit like, when people travel, which a lot of us haven't done for the last couple of years.
What's that like?
Yeah, what does that get on a plane? Oh my God, that would be a novelty. But it's like when some people, they might say, I'm going to Europe.
Yeah.
And I'm going for a month. Okay.
Yeah.
What are you doing? Now, one person, which is my preference, I go to one country and I see that really well.
And have a good look,
And just really because sometimes you need to immerse yourself into it to kind of enjoy it along the way. Other people, they're like, well, I'm doing Spain, Portugal, France, Germany, Sweden, the full...
I'm taking through a style.
I'm like, holy, you're on and off a plane or on a train. I mean, to me, that is also a point where you kind of go, the enjoyment is the journey, but when to me, you're just running from one thing to the next without really absorbing...
Yeah, well, I mean, I know I do that when I'm planning my holiday. I'm trying to jam more in so I can get, so the holiday's better. More stuff is better, right? And then when I do the holiday, I think, I'm quite tired.
I'm exhausted. I'm having a holiday after the holiday because I've moved around so much.
There's a disconnect, I guess, between kind of planning me and, and the way I experience life, And I wonder if that's an issue with success too. You might plan success as looking one particular way, and then in fact, actually what you want in your, sometimes you don't even have insight into what you want or what makes you happy.
I agree. Yeah. But also sometimes as you're going through, your expectations of the outcome are completely different than what you had thought. So when you actually get to the spot, you're like, actually, I wouldn't mind just sitting for a bit just to reassess because it's not what I expected. And that might then change some of my future decisions. But if you fly through it too quickly, I mean, there's times where you've got to move fast and times where you can kind of, draw breath. And I think part of it is trying to identify that it's not, you don't need to redline all the way through to say that you're famously successful.
Yeah. Well, actually, that's something some of the business owners that I know, and probably from my own experience, often, the advice is from all the professionals that you got to work, on your business, not in your business, right? And so you've got to just not be running around managing day-to-day stuff. You've got to be thinking about the broader strategy and whatever. But some people don't like doing that, right? No. And so I know in the case of a lawyer, some lawyers like myself, I quite like to still talk to clients and be on the tools and so on. You know what I mean? I don't want to just talk to other lawyers about the problems in their cases. I want to actually, deal with clients and deal with and so, and part of success for me is continuing to be involved in clients' businesses and help them grow and so on, even though I'm growing my own business and perhaps working on the business is part of that. Perhaps I can outsource some of that, you know what I mean? Perhaps I don't have to do all of that myself and I can continue to work for some key clients myself. Whereas, I think the conventional advice is, that you should take the CEO role or whatever, where you don't actually do any of the
work
yourself. Well, the thing is, what you do is just a different kind of work. You
Correct,
just deal with
correct.
operational issues. You deal with structural issues or strategy or marketing or whatever, instead of dealing with particular legal problems for clients. And it just depends on your personality to what you. But you got to understand yourself and what drives you. Maybe you like doing the technical stuff, and the other stuff you don't like doing. And is there a way you can structure your business to
Correct.
sort of to match that? Otherwise, your business ends up, and we've talked about this before, you end up a kind of a slave to your business requirements.
Yeah. And this is also where you need to,
Yeah.
Allocate your time.
Yeah.
Where you actually need to allocate some time in your diary to think. So you actually don't have any appointments. You don't do anything. You actually just need to kind of that capacity to think. Whereas, again, if you're running really quickly all the time, trying to be, the overnight success. I mean, it's a bit like the 10-year overnight success.
Yeah. Absolutely.
Sometimes it just kind of rolls on and it's all sort of moving. But again, and even the person who's running and going through the experience, you can sometimes then get a person to look over and look. And what the person who's on the outside looking in may turn around and say, "Oh, wow, you guys are just such a successful business.
Yeah.
Like it all looks so good, and your whole lifestyle, it's all, beds of roses, and it's all fantastic." But the reality is, you lift it up, and you really get talking to someone. They're like, "I'm exhausted. I never see my family.
Yeah.
Sure, we got all these toys, and we get to go on these holidays, but I'm under the pump the whole time. I'm not actually really enjoying it anymore."
Yeah.
They're on that treadmill. That's a really challenging discussion to have with someone, because it's like, how do you change some of that? Because clearly their thought of success has moved.
Yeah, wow, that's a very powerful observation. I think that I think that there's a lot to be said for that. That you just you really got to understand because when you're looking from the outside, a lot of other people look successful. You compare, it's the Instagram phenomenon, right? You look and you go, look how wonderful they are. Everyone's got a six pack, and everyone's
Don't you? As I refer to my kids, there's a lot of work's gone into this slab, kids.
Yeah, but that's very true, even about businesses. And people often, they don't tell strangers about their business struggles. They sort of project success, and I can understand there's probably good reasons to do that. You don't want to be projecting all your failures, perhaps, but if you compare yourself to other people, you might look like a failure, or they might look like a success when they're actually really struggling.
Yeah, and that's the whole. I think we've seen a lot of it through the COVID period, the mental health issues for a lot of people. There were some people out there that were completely, their businesses took off because they were very supportive in the, what was required. But on the other side, there was a lot of people whose businesses were just shut down, who were very successful prior to COVID, but they've had to reconfigure and recalibrate their businesses. And some of them have got back up and others haven't. But some of them will still say, "Look, we're still successful and we're still here, and I'm still here. Let's move on." Other people, it's been a disaster for them, and they've gone to a dark place.
Yeah.
And that's a real challenge.
So what do we do about it? Do we the start of every financial year, we do a plan, we map out what success looks like and make sure that the game plan for the company is on the road, or do we?
I always think it's important to be able to articulate it. So even for a small business, there might only be one or two operators in there, but having a third party sometimes just to have that discussion to kind of go, all right, well, what are my key measurements? And because getting a person to talk about that rather than letting it run around in their head, I think so important, because it actually forces them to explain to someone, well, what does success look like for us as a business? What would we like it to be in the next, 6, 12, 18 months, 5 years? What does that look like, and how can we all work together to get to that? But until you articulate it, people don't know what's going on in people's minds.
Yeah. And I've sometimes been articulating something like that to someone, and in the process of doing it, had a bit of a realization. Because when I'm explaining it, I go, hang on, that doesn't make sense. Or once it's coming out of your mouth, it's different than when it's flopping around in your head. Which
is that balance between working in the business or on the business.
Yeah. And then I suppose you've got to make sure that you're doing the things that will bring that vision to life, that move towards success. Because I think you can talk about, I want to spend more time with my family, but then you can also take on heaps more responsibility at work and go, well, hang on, how does that what are we doing here? You know, what are the goals? And maybe you do want to spend more time at work, and maybe you're willing to make sacrifices around family time or whatever. I mean, there's a place for that. There's, you know, work-life balance is not always means spending heaps of time with your kids. Maybe you have to be away from them to achieve certain things in business, which is whatever.
And again,
but you got to know it and do it on purpose, not by accident. And I see so much wasted, unnecessary suffering as a result of people kind of doing. Being run by their business and not really taking their responsibility for their own vision of success, you know?
Yep. But also, once you've articulated to a third party, it's much easier to then anchor your decisions based upon that.
Yeah.
So it's like, you said this was important and this is what success would look like. However, your behaviours are going in the opposite direction. Yeah. Hang on, or even the team that's around you. It's like, Alex, you said you want to do this. Why are you still here? Like, why are you doing what you're doing when you said this is what was important for you, but why are you still in the office?
Yeah. I mean, I can think of two clients right now who both of them have said, "Oh, my wife's harassing me for a holiday. She says we should go on a holiday. She's harassing me. How awful!" And I say, you know, and then they also say, the most important thing to me, family.
Correct.
I just want to spend time with my wife and my kids. They're my absolute whole world. You know, that's great, right? And I go, well, why don't you go on a holiday with your wife? Yeah, with your wife. You know how she kind of wants to, and you know she hasn't. She's not being subtle about it. She's told you directly. You know what I mean?
And so you're articulating and telling and complaining to me about it.
Yeah. So there's something out of whack there. So
really this is what we talk about a lot of the time. The definition of success, like it means different things to different people, and it also depends on where you are in your stage of life.
Yeah, of course. Yeah.
You know, that's a real challenge.
Yeah.
All right, Alex. Well, any final words as we wind up on what does success look like?
Oh, well, I suppose I would say is it's different for different people, and I think you want to have an idea of what it looks like for you, and then do the things that will lead you in that direction, you know, and talk to someone else about it, whether that's a financial advisor or a confidant, whether it's your father or your son or your brother or a friend, whatever. I think a third party is really, really important, but you know, otherwise life can sort of pass you by when you're in the running on the mouse wheel to try and make more money, you know, which might not be what you really want to achieve.
Yeah. And also, to me, the final point for me is define your own success. Don't worry about what your neighbour's doing. What are you doing? Like that's where you got to anchor your own success to. Stop trying to keep up with the Joneses. Like it's not.
Yeah.
What's successful to you, it may be completely different to someone else. So, you know, kind of define your own success and enjoy the journey.
Yeah, enjoy the journey is a good one, yeah.
All right, Alex. Once again, the dulcet tones of Alex from, Taurus Legal. There they are, amazing sort of, lawyers.
Featured on the radio and all
that.
Correct.
I'll be getting my autograph book out shortly just to load you up.
All right, thanks, Dave. Thanks.
Talk soon. See ya.
See ya.